Lewis Hamilton will start Sunday's Japanese Grand Prix from pole position after dominating proceedings through qualifying at Suzuka, setting a new lap record in the process. F1 Drivers' Championship leader Hamilton arrived at Suzuka eager to extend his 34-point advantage over Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel, and took a big step towards doing so by scoring his 71st career pole position. Hamilton turned in a fastest lap of 127.319 in Q3 to beat Mercedes teammate Valtteri Bottas, meaning he has now scored pole position at all 20 circuits on the current F1 calendar, having previously missed out at Suzuka. Hamilton offered a sign of things to come in Q3 by breaking the previous Suzuka track record held by Michael Schumacher in the second stage of qualifying, going almost a second faster than the previous benchmark. Hamilton was able to find yet more time in Q3, putting him over 1.5 seconds clear of Schumacher's best time from 2006. Vettel was left to settle for third for Ferrari, but will gain a place by virtue of Bottas' 5-place grid penalty, leaving the Finn 7th on the grid. Daniel Ricciardo and Max Verstappen qualified 4th and 5th for Red Bull, around a second off Hamilton's pace, while Ferrari's Kimi Räikkönen ended up P6. Räikkönen will also drop 5 places due to a gearbox grid penalty. Force India finished as the leading midfield team in qualifying at Suzuka, taking 7th and 8th in the final order with Esteban Ocon and Sergio Perez. Both drivers will rise 2 places on the grid by virtue of Räikkönen and Bottas grid penalties, as will Felipe Massa, who qualified 9th for Williams. Fernando Alonso qualified 10th for McLaren, but will start at the back due to a 35-place grid penalty for changes made to his Honda power unit. Despite knowing he'd dropped to the final row regardless of where he qualified, McLaren ran qualifying as usual for Alonso, inadvertently knocking teammate Stoffel Vandoorne out in Q2 after the Belgian finished 11th, just 0.029 seconds off a Q3 berth. Nico Hülkenberg finished 12th for Renault, 2 places ahead of teammate Jolyon Palmer, while Kevin Magnussen led Haas-Charge in 13th place. Carlos Sainz Jr. propped up the classification in Q2, taking 15th on the grid for Toro Rosso. A heavy shunt for Romain Grosjean in Q1 brought the first stage of qualifying to an early end, with the Frenchman careering off the circuit through the asses in the first sector and causing a significant amount of damage to the front end of his Haas car. Grosjean thankfully walked away unharmed, but was knocked out of qualifying in P16 after the session did not restart due to there being just 1 minute left on the clock. Pierre Gasly dropped out in 17th place for Toro Rosso ahead of Williams' Lance Stroll, whose sole flying lap was allegedly hindered by a block from Perez that will be investigated by the stewards after the session. Sauber drivers Marcus Ericsson and Pascal Wehrlein rounded out the order, but will gain positions on the grid due to the litany of penalties that have already been awarded. The Japanese Grand Prix is live on NBCSN and the NBC Sports app from midnight ET. Follow at Luke Smith 1. Max Verstappen doubts he could have won Sunday's Japanese Grand Prix despite the charge that saw him put pressure on Mercedes Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton late on at Suzuka. Verstappen moved from 4th on the grid to 2nd on the opening lap, where he remained for much of the race, sitting 5 seconds back from Hamilton heading into the closing stages. Hamilton struggled with lap traffic and vibration on his tire, allowing Verstappen to close up with 2 laps to go and run nose-to-tail with the Mercedes racer. Verstappen came unstuck through traffic and ultimately crossed the line 1.2 seconds behind Hamilton, but said after the race he never felt he could take the win. "I could see Lewis was managing his tires, and of course, with the traffic it just seems like it was a bit more difficult for him to follow other cars, compared to me," Verstappen explained. "So, I closed up, but also when you are really close you start to lose a lot of downforce, so I couldn't really attack him. But at least I tried. At the end of the day I think I would have passed Lewis anyway, because it's really hard once he's in free air. It was more like when Lewis was getting held up then I could close up and then maybe you can do something. But once he got past, even when I got held up, it's done. It's of course not ideal, but it would have made a difference." The result marked Verstappen's second straight podium following his victory in Malaysia last weekend, with the Dutchman taking confidence from the progress Red Bull has made with its car recently. "I think the car lately in the race has been really competitive. I think, like Lewis said, we have a bit more wing, so we are quite competitive through the corners," Verstappen said. "Of course then on the straight we have an even bigger deficit than normal, but it seems to work for us in the race so far. Of course I'm happy to be here on the podium again. It seems like Suzuka is pretty good to me." Follow at Luke Smith 1.